Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chuma. Is there anyone who has anything to add on that regard?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, Jeannie, you can come on board.
Okay, I have a slightly different question, maybe relating almost. Yes, Ifoma here.
Okay.
Thank you, Pamela. And it relates maybe to the earlier presentations on M&D. One of, I think, especially from Lovena and Caroline, maybe we can get some feedback, having the past experience and the current. My question is, I've seen there's this call, it's related to attribution. And maybe it even relates to the question that we had from Manuel. You know, like our theory of change limits ourselves to parliament, what members of parliament say, the behavioral change that we see in members of parliament, the legislation that comes on board. But I've seen that our reports also are very interested in what is said out there in terms of like under me, coming back to the issue of media. I know it relates to us, but what is said maybe by the executive related to the same, maybe that one makes sense. What the chiefs say, so how do we, just from my understanding, why do we bring that data? I know it defines our environment, but as we keep collecting that data, what are we going to use it for? Are we going to say we influence the environment? I just want to understand that part. Do we, when there is more talk out there on issues of SRHR by our partners, like especially the executive, the general public, how do we see ourselves using this data later on? Because as the presentations were saying, whatever data you're collecting, I think should be useful and inform you in terms of certain decisions that you make. I just want to get an understanding from that direction.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Ifoma, on that part. Anyone who wants to respond to that, especially anyone from our resource person? Okay, there's Ms. Jabulile.
Thank you very much, Pamela. Thank you very much, Madam SJ and our esteemed guests. From where I am, I just want to appreciate our media, Mr. Makatsa's intervention on role of media in the execution of SRHR projects. And I also want to appreciate all the questions, including Ifoma's one. And I want to share a bit of a case to do with Eswatini. We are certain that our media is the lifeline of in the execution of our SRHR project. That is number one. So if that's the case, we engaged or they are part of our stakeholders in our national working group, such that our first, when we initiated or when we conceived the project, they were part of everything. In terms of capacity initiatives, though, the capacity initiative, we know Parliament has got such dynamism, it's ongoing. So engaging with them one-on-one is ideal in our national working group. Number two, our national working group also include the mainstreaming of the other interministerial departments like Ministry of Health, Education, Economic Planning, Finance, etc. Also, our national group, we also have traditional leaders, CSOs, the religious forum, and the like. So with the inception or through our inception, the engagement of our national working group makes it feasible for us to execute our mandate on SRHR, though there's some form of partiality at times. And with reporting and all, I usually share a lot. You usually see and even query that, Jabu, you are having a whole coverage. How do you make this happen? We liaise with them now and again, but parliaments are different. But from today's session, I'm also learning that capacity development initiative for the media threshold, especially with a COVID impact as well, is key so that we can instill or drill with them the importance of evidence-based approach or reporting to quantify in terms of statistics and more. Also well appreciated is the issue of attaching intents from our institution, which I regard as a policy issue again to liaise with the Ministry of Education, who are part of the National Working Group, to say, what if with our tertiary institution, we can have attachment of our media so that we can capacitate them on SRHR issues, because they traverse across all issues of our ministries and of our oversight, legislative, as well as our budgetary issues. That's what I want to say. I hope it makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Chabulile. Is there anyone who wants to add before maybe I just give my contribution towards the two questions? Someone who can give us maybe an insight on the two questions? I think
Yes.
Ms. Kwamboka, you are on. Thank you very much. You can.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate you, Madam Chair Pam, and for the question, please allow me to contribute briefly, especially on the importance of media tracking and the media influence and that connection and why it's very, very important. Actually, this is what influences political will. This is what influences formation of opinions at a very large scale. And there is a slide I had earlier. It was a bit busy, it was a bit crowded, but one of the things that I had highlighted there, or I had briefly touched on, was really that the ongoing monitoring of these advocacy activities, especially in the media realm, they really even help us get new advocates. They help us solidify partnerships. They help us with visibility. And you see, when you're in the business of influencing and persuasion, the visibility of the issue is very important. And the evidence or the continuous monitoring and reporting enables the champions to present the gravitas of the problem. And it helps increase that understanding of this issue. So I just wanted to highlight that has a very critical link and contribution to expanding the constituency of believers or of rights crusaders, and will always be a very key part. And now, just to also mention, we have I think we had I think it was Moses who brought in even the impact that fake news brought in, because we have new media streams like social media where you are not able to control and verify. Now, more reason for us to continually document and post, so that against all the fake news, there is a gleam or a storm of real news also coming in to counter. Because at the end of the day, it is the user who will just make judgments or decisions based on what is placed in front of them. So if we let the fake news take the day, then we remain at risk. If we step up our presence and push and visibility, then by and by the truth that we speak and the persuasions of rights that we have start becoming normalized and by and by dominant within this very, very, really crowded space, if I can call it that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Kwamboka. Much appreciated. Someone with any insight to that or a question? Ifoma, are you answered or you want to pose another one?
If I may try and answer Ifoma somewhat.
Alô? Sim, mais uma vez, saudar a todos os panelistas e todos os participantes deste seminário.
If you can hear me, can you please
muito grande para nós como Moçambique poder ouvir as apresentações que foram feitas e foram bem feitas. Relativamente à questão do envolvimento dos mídias para a divulgação do nosso trabalho de pesquisação ou de interação com a sociedade, a nível do Parlamento moçambicano, nós temos uma rede de jornalistas parlamentares em que tem realizado mesas redondas para fazer balanço sobre a divulgação das atividades levadas a cabo pelo Parlamento e também dizer que ao longo do nosso trabalho como Gabinete da Juventude Parlamentar, nós temos a sorte de termos um gabinete, porque em relação aos outros parlamentos não tem gabinete, e nós sentimos que este papel de trazer os direitos e a saúde sexual e reprodutiva para os jovens é o papel do próprio jovem, tem que ser o próprio jovem a falar per si, para que o outro jovem também perceba como é que isto funciona. E durante o mês de setembro nós fizemos as jornadas parlamentares. Essas jornadas parlamentares visitamos 3 províncias do norte do nosso país e visitamos jovens, visitamos hospitais, centros de saúde que fazem, que promovem, ou melhor, que assistem a população, assistem, eles, como é que eu posso dizer, os centros de saúde fornecem os serviços de saúde básicos para os jovens. Nós tivemos o nosso jornalista e que ele fez acompanhamento, par e passo, fez fotografias, e depois disso nós vamos fazer uma reportagem audiovisual para tal. Relativamente aos desafios de implementação do nosso projeto, quero de certa forma concordar também com o que o meu colega Chifunga falou, e apenas acrescentar que estamos com alguns desafios de apropriação ou padronização dos procedimentos, matrizes e modelos, porque a forma de reportar como nós fazemos o reporte dos nossos relatores é diferente. Então, em algum momento, entramos em algum conflito com a Pamela, mas ela, com muita paciência, tem procurado nos guiar para que possamos, de forma mais rápida, assimilar. Muito obrigada.
Okay, thank you very much. I managed to get, I think the critical part, I got it, that they are actually, she was actually saying that at times the reporting, the way reporting is done, probably through the templates that I sometimes provide, and the reporting maybe they are used to is a bit different, and they find it as a challenge. Is there anyone who can assist on that? I wouldn't want to come up on that one. I would want someone to say it because I'm also involved there. I don't know if we got the question from Jubia. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Pamela, we can hear you. We can hear you. Just
Oh, thank
paraphrase,
you.
maybe. Just paraphrase.
All right, I was trying to paraphrase, but if someone also got it, maybe this is the way I got it. Maybe someone could have gotten it a bit different. But from what I'm getting, she's actually trying to say the reporting part is the one that they are finding it a challenge, maybe probably through the templates that I also give to them, or the reporting requirement that we post to them. They feel it is a bit different from the way they are used to. They're using part of it. I'm not sure whether she's saying the way they are used to from the previous phase or from their own parliaments. Maybe she can emphasize on that part, or someone can come on board.
If I may, Madam Pamela.
Yes, Madam SG.
Yes, just to thank the researchers as well for coming in with those challenges. I think we will need to dedicate time to just get our resource persons. Jonathan did indicate our very much needed collaboration that he's able to facilitate with us with the University of Stellenbosch. We'll be able to look at these things. I just want to state a few facts that would assist us all. We have different parliamentary systems. It is not one. you will note that some indicators will not be relevant to certain parliamentary systems. And therefore, the expectations is not that we should make sure that the M&E tool that is given is strictly what needs to be included in the manner that is envisaged by the generic M&E tool. So that's one thing to note. The other issue of evidence just really speaks to accountability. Definitely, we need resources to hold the executive to account. If you are just going to listen to what is brought to Parliament or what is reported by the ministries, who are the machineries of government, the evidence will not reconcile. But you must also note that there is no government that would fund an opposition. At any given time, it is the minister whose voice should be louder. And you will not have enough resources to go out there and gather the evidence that you found out Mozambique when you go into the field, where you found that indeed there was no access to this, there were shortfalls in this, and this was happening. That is why the project has made it significant that you have technical working group, you have reference groups, because this is where you tie up with civil society organizations. And if there are clear principles and there's trust, you can indeed use that information for members of parliament to use in the interim. That's what I want to say. So evidence that you pick up from everywhere else obviously will not be good. In other countries, IFOMA, you have action taken report by ministers. So it is very important for you to realize your role in terms of reconciling. For instance, the countries that we've been to, in their national strategic framework, they talk very freely about commitments made by ministers of this, commitment made in Addis Ababa for this, that they agree. In the national framework, they'll include those things as what the country embraces. It takes a few minutes to find that this one is out of the constitution or culture does not agree for this to happen. So as a researcher, if you're going to just look at the black and white, or if you don't become wholesome in looking at what X is saying vis-a-vis what B is saying, you'll find yourself in a very difficult situation. In every case, there's an opposition on the same facts. That is why at school we are taught critical analysis. So that is why we are saying, even as you report, be aware of what is happening in America, be aware what's happening in China, be aware what is happening even in other regions and within the executive, because the executive sometimes can be split. More so in parliament, there'll be divisions on the same issue. So your role goes further than what this M&E tool, we are looking for that type of innovation. We saw in the last project, there were prescribed activities, but there was nothing written about having, moot courts. There was nothing written about going to demonstrate at night with sex workers. There was nothing written about MPs staining their white pants to show menstrual, that menstruation is important. There was nothing written to say influence the trade bill so that we can look at taxes. No, this requires us to be robust, to look at some of the plans that ministers or ministries have. Zambia was able to influence the insurance bill. And perchance, because that was the theme of the committee, they came across the fact that this issue, which was going to impact on universal access to health, was long discussed many, many years ago in Parliament, and somehow it lost steam. They took it up and say, you know what, this will deal with the issue that we really want to look into. So this, as long as you're aware, some of the data just assists you to be much more robust and helps members of parliament to look at some of it. Because legislation has passed, we want to look at service delivery on the other end by the ministries. So I hope this answers your questions without spoon feeding, but for you to broadly ensure that what you do does conform to your country situation and the systems that are in place. This is not a prescribed project proposal that you just look at that and say, the sign says stop, I'm going to stop. The sign may say stop when children are getting married, and we've heard about all the consequences. The sign may say stop contraceptives when we have children. There was a time in Zambia where 16,000 children were falling pregnant in primary school. So do you stop? Reflect on your passion, your belief in some of these issues, and then the work will continue. I hope that confuses you further, but gives you fodder to integrate in how we do our work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam SG, on that part. While this maybe we are waiting for someone to give us the last question, I can consider for now because we've been given a short time. I'll just comment on all the questions that have been asked. What is to prepare just quickly to say on Informa, especially the aspect of how are we going to be using the data that we collect, maybe from traditional leaders, from the MPs, from the communities. Basically, when we get the data, we are collecting data around our indicators, around our progress markers. That's very key to look and to reflect against our theory of change. If we do a certain activity, what output are we going to get? What outcome are we trying to achieve out of this activity that we have done? And when we collect that data now, the way we use it, we analyze it. You analyze it as a researcher. You give your own analysis before we do a consolidated analysis to give a feedback to see the impact of our intervention, the impact of what we have been doing, of the activities that we have been doing. So we need that data for us to make informed decisions, also to improve the project and also to give feedback of the impact that we are making to society. Are we making an impact to the community that we are serving through the project that we are actually implementing? And on manual, we have realized that collaborations are very key on collecting data. If you can't reach to those areas, it's also important that we can use the people that were already there or institutions that are already set up for us as well. So with this, I can give one person maybe to give us a question, or one or two, because our time is quite limited. Is there any of the researchers we have got something of concern, any challenge? I think Ginny, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you, Pamela. Good afternoon, everyone, once again. I just wanted to make a point about the challenges encountered in Seychelles while collecting data. If, for example, we are organizing an activity at Parliament level, then it's very easy to collect our data because we have the upper hand on this. But when it comes to collecting data at national level, then this poses a very, very big problem, not just for me as the researcher, but for any other individual or other researchers who want to collect data. Especially now, I'm talking specifically with regards to SRHR and HIV/AIDS. This is because there is no synergy between the relevant departments when collecting and classifying this data. It's not just between the various ministries or departments, it's existent even within the Department of Health itself. Like you will have NAC, you will have the programs office, you will have the CDCU and other units. They will all be collecting data, and mostly the data will be along the same line. And when you reach out to them to access those data, they are even reluctant to share those data. It's as if like, this is my thing, I collected it. If you want your data, you go get it yourself. But then if say we're talking on a yearly basis and we want to know how many underage girls fell pregnant, say during, excuse me, how many underage girls fell pregnant during a specific year. The AIDS unit will be collecting that type of data. The CDCU will be collecting the same type of data, and other units as well. Then when you try to get data individually from them, because there's no central area or a central entity that puts everything together. You get the data that is all over the place. And when you get data which is all over the place, then it hinders your work, because then you have to sit down, put all those data together, and maybe even go a little further and do a little bit of background research yourself, so that you can have sort of, even if not the actual data, but an average that you can work upon. This is a very, very big challenge for us. And I don't know how we're going to get past this at national level. I don't know if in other countries, the SADC region, if you are facing the same problems, and if yes, we share, and I will be able to know on my side how to deal with that. To me, this is a major challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jenny. If there is anyone who can share an experience, maybe how they managed to overcome a similar problem, if any one of us have encountered it, or any insight from our resource person or anyone on the floor.
If I may put on the spot Jonathan and Caroline, the issue of conflict of data plays out even at the level of ministers. So if they can just share that, I think some of the nitty-gritties for the project, we can then give better information going forward, but that this is not peculiar. We've had certain decisions being thrown out simply because they don't trust the UN data. They want their country data. So it is very important to realize that when you work for government, government trusts its own information. If you are going to collect the data in order to challenge a minister, she will definitely say, this house is being misled because this is what I have before me. So it's very important for us to look at the intention of why we're collecting this data and whose audience is it for. But I'm not getting into too much of the controversy, but if Jonathan and Caroline could share a little bit of that, because this is also quite prevalent at decision-making levels at international and regional levels. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Boemo. Maybe Jonathan can come on board.
I think that's right. And we could have a whole seminar of a couple of hours on this topic, but we never want to have false data, because false data is fake news. And part of what all of us are fighting is this world where science doesn't matter anymore, evidence doesn't matter, you just make up something and run with it. So we really don't want that to happen. But sometimes a set of data that is less good than another set might be better for your purposes. So as the SecGen says, 100% perfect UN data might be less useful for policy making than 80% perfect country data, because the country data is accepted by the members of parliament, it's accepted by the executive, it might be accepted by districts or by others. And I think that that's one of the things, one of the games that we have to play between the UN agencies that support our member states, ourselves and others. And sometimes you go with the less good data because that's what's going to get the policy change that works. Then of course we have communities of practice. Then we ally ourselves with civil society, and we let civil society do a shadow report, and we let the debate emerge around, is the data this or is it that? But in the meanwhile, we're trying to get the policy through, and we use the data, as long as it's not fake, we use the data that will get the policy change we desire. Over.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's all about efficacy as well. Whatever is useful is what we adopt, is what we use. So I think I agree to Jonathan on that point. Anyone who has any contribution towards Denise's question, or we can have the very last one and then we close up this section. If we don't have any other question, thank you very much for this session. Thank you, Program Director. I can give it back to you to continue. Ms. Boemo, your hand is up, but you are off. Dennis, are you around or?
Hello.
Yes, thank you
Yes,
very
I'm
much.
around.
I'm giving it back to you, Dennis. It looks like we don't
Thank
have any other questions around this session.
Thank you, Pamela, for moderating the discussions, as well as Madam SG for your intervention. I actually picked two issues from this session, that parliamentary setups or systems are not homogeneous. Situations actually differ from one country to the other. So the need to adapt the M&E system or framework to the prevailing country situation is actually important. And also the need to collaborate, the need for the researchers to work hand in hand with the country's technical working groups for information gathering. Without wasting much of our time, let's move to the last set of presentations from our distinguished presenters or resource persons from APHRC. They will take us through the theory of change. There will be discussion on the theory of change, and also more importantly, a discussion on the importance of an inherent ability in understanding the causal link in the story of how change can actually occur. Let me call upon the resource persons from APHRC to take us through the presentation. Please, our presenters, come on board. Thank you.
Good afternoon and morning for some of you who are behind. So my name is Patterson Siema, and I work for APHRC as the head of policy engagement and communication. And I'm so glad that you've given us a chance to be part of this very engaging discussion. So we will be going through training on the theory of change, and we will be presenting the two of us, myself and Susan Mugwe. I haven't seen her online, but I think she's there. So I will quickly take you through the introduction of that, and then ask Susan, who is a very good expert on these issues, to actually make her presentation, and then we will have a question and answer. So I will allow me to share my screen shortly. Okay. So I hope you are able to see my screen.
Yes, sir. Proceed.
Thank you. Yeah. So just a quick update. You've been interacting with the APHRC, but the Africa Population and Health Research Center is a premier research institution in Africa. Our headquarters are in Nairobi, and we have an office in Dakar, Senegal, that looks over our French projects. And we operate in over 30 countries in Africa. Mainly started as a health, population and education and well-being research center. However, we've expanded to cover other issues such as aging, urbanization, capacity strengthening. And this is because we have a couple of PhD support programs. And then we have a policy engagement and communications. And then we have over 130 qualified PhD holders who work with us, and a staff strength of about 130. And then we are implementing over 88 programs in 8 thematic areas. So we were asked to make a presentation on theory of change. And what I say is that as an introduction is that as a theory of change helps you write down what change you expect to happen and how that change might come out. So you are able to actually visualize on what is expected out there and how then that change will come about. Looking at also some of the stakeholders and some of the issues that may limit that taking place. It is definitely outcome-based, so you're looking at the outcome of your project, and it demonstrates a causal model. So what is it that will cause that to happen? It also underlines and articulates the underlying assumptions. And then the theory of change must link the outcome activities to explain why a desired change is expected to come about. And this is important because we are dealing with a very important issue, sexual reproductive health and rights. And this is a complex initiative that requires rigorous plan for it to success. There are so many issues as we've been listening. For example, even just people just being open to discussing issues of sexual reproductive rights. And even, I mean, in many countries that you work, the religious leaders, the cultural leaders, the gatekeepers within the community, they're very, very, when you introduce issues of sexual reproductive rights and health, they actually become very emotive. And so it is important that you actually understand and frame this well within your theory of change, because that will then help you be able to make the right decisions. And then the ability to evaluate appropriate outcomes at the right time and within the right sequence. This is because you need to know what you're measuring. And Susan will be able to speak more to that. Then you will also have a chance to also see through the theory of change, explain why certain initiative worked. Maybe it works in a particular context, and it didn't work in another context. And if it didn't work, what is it that went wrong, and how can you then again rectify that? Because we are also aware that we are dealing with multiple number of countries, different cultures, different religious practices, different political environments, different parliamentary systems. So how do we know what works where? Because you cannot have a situation where one bill fits everyone. So we want to be able to show that what works, and if it didn't work, could it be that we prescribe the wrong solution for that environment? So that would be able to come about if you have actually developed a very good theory of change. And then the ability to also use research to report on SRHR data and inform appropriate policy action. This is very important because you are researchers, and you want your research to be taken up into policy action. So by having a very good and well-framed theory of change, you will have the opportunity to actually then use that data and enable data to be taken up by the policy actors, and then probably get into some policy action that we can then seize the results that we have designed out in our program. So I think that is what I have for the introduction. So I'll let Susan join us and make her presentation. And then after that, we will be open for a question and answer. Thank you so much. Susan, if you can hear me, you can present.
Good afternoon, everybody. And I hope you can all hear me. It's really hard to be the last one to make a presentation. I see a hand up. I don't know if.
No, I'm just clapping. It's a clapping hand for our previous presenter, sorry.
Yes. Yeah, I was saying it's really hard to be the last one to make a presentation, and especially very close to lunch. So it's either Grace Kibunja doesn't like me a lot, or she has a lot of confidence in my presentation. I hope it's the later. As Patterson has said, my name is Susan Mugwe. I'm an independent consultant, and my expertise is in results-based management, monitoring and evaluation, and reporting. So all the questions that you've been asking, throughout this morning are pertinent questions. They're questions that I have had over my career, and they do require, I wish there was more time for us to interrogate some of that, because if you don't get those right, then it becomes very difficult for you to actually actualize your projects. So hopefully there may be another opportunity to delve, do a deep dive in each of those issues. that have been raised. Now, I'm going to ask your indulgence, and I will ask you to put on your video because I want us to do an introductory activity, which will require us to see the product. You don't have to put it on throughout, it's just for this introductory activity, if you can. And as you're doing that, I will also ask you to take a piece of paper. Just grab a piece of paper. Just like that. Grab a piece of paper. If you can, put on your video. If you can't, it's okay, but it would be nicer and better if you put on your video. Thank you, everybody. Okay, now I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. Hold your paper in your hand, but close your eyes. And don't open your eyes until I ask you to open them. Okay, now I'm going to ask you to fold your paper. With your eyes closed. Do not open your eyes. Cut off one corner. Cut off one corner. Fold your paper again. 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 Cut off one corner. Don't open your eyes. Unfold your paper.
Unfold.
Unfold. Don't open your eyes yet. Unfold your paper. And make sure that you're holding it in your hands. Now you can open your eyes, and I want you to see everybody else's product. Just show your paper, show your product, show your paper. And I want you to tell me if you can see anybody that has the same exact product that you do. No? Okay. Thank you very much for your indulgence. This is the reason why we do M&E and why we do the theory of change. Because a lot of times, even though, Ifoma, is your hand up?
No, I'm actually clapping for you.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Thanks. You all understood the instructions.
Yeah.
You all know what a paper is. You all know what to fold is. You all know what to tear is. You all know what a corner is. Yet we all had different products at the end of the day. The reason we do M&E, and particularly theory of change, is that we think we understand what the project is asking us to do. And we all assume that we have the same destination. Even right now, everybody can give you the definition of what is SRHR. They can give you the definition of HIV and AIDS, the textbook definition. The question is, conceptually, do we all understand it in the same way? And so there is a need not only to just say, okay, this is the goal of the project, these are the objectives of the project. Do we all know which roadmap we are following to get to the destination? do we all have the same understanding of what our intermediate results will look like for us to know that we are on the right path and we are actually approaching our destination? So I hope this will show. You can indicate to me if you're able to see my slide.
Yes.
You're
Yes,
able
we
to
are.
see it?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So here's how we'll visualize the theory of change. In each of these little boxes, you can see a tree and you can see a swing. So here is how the stakeholders explained what their project was about. It is a tree, a swing, and 3 seats. And this is how the thematic leaders understood it. You still have the tree, you still have the swing, but now you notice that the number of seats has reduced to 1. And this is how the technical working group conceptualized it. And this is how the proposal was written. The tree is still there, the swing is still there, but is it really a swing? But this is also how the community leaders described it. Very comfortable seats. And you talked about reporting. This is how the project was documented. Do you see anything there? But this is also how the implementation was done. But when it came to billing the donor, we billed them for the cost of a roller coaster. And this is how our ministry supported it. But really, this is what the community really needed. Everybody have their own ideas of what the project is about or what changes the project needs to bring about. But everybody understanding it in their completely different ways. And that is why it's important to have a theory of change. So what is it? What is this animal that we call the theory of change? As you know, there are hundreds of programs that are implemented by different organizations, and every organization is convinced that they're doing good work and that they're making a difference in people's lives. But how can you make the grand claim that your intervention or program is actually leading to transformative change? I think it was Ifoma who was talking about attribution. Can you attribute the change that you're seeing within the sector of reproductive health to what your project or your program is doing? But if you have a theory of change, then you have a certain degree and a high degree of confidence that you can actually connect the dots back and say, yeah, we did this, and as a result of this, these are the changes that happened along the way, and here we are. So that is why it is important when you're designing your programs that your theory of change becomes your core. It becomes the element in M&E that tells you, how will we know we will be making any changes? Many times people develop their theory of change way after the project has been funded. The question is, how do you know you're going to get there? And this also points to the fact that many people also involve M&E when it comes to reporting, or when the donor is telling you, can you give us the statistics or the data regarding how many services, how many people are accessing services in your health sentinel facilities? Then you remember that there's a department called M&E, and it usually gets the darkest corner in the office. What I'm trying to say is that even at conceptualization, please involve your M&E people. Let them look at what you're proposing and tell you, how do we define this? How do we articulate this in a manner that we will be able to say at the end of it, this is what we did? Because your M&E experts are able to put on the evaluation hat. They are able to actually tell you, look at what you're proposing from an evaluation perspective and tell you, by the time our project is being evaluated 5 years down the road, this is what they would need to find. This is what they would be looking for. And then working backwards towards now your proposal to ensure that those things are in place. So as the name suggests, a TOC is the thinking behind how a particular intervention will bring about results. And it is often depicted as an illustration to show how a desired change is expected to happen in a particular context. And I think it was Jonathan who alluded to this. How does X intervention lead to Y change? And then a cumulative of X interventions leading to several changes, and how those changes then manifest as outcomes. So it is also important for you to be very familiar with your results chain. And your results chain, starting from what are the preconditions that are necessary and must be in place before you even think about developing a results chain. The distinction between your activities and your inputs, and how your activities lead to your outputs, and how those outputs then finally lead to your outcome and eventually to your impact. Because a lot of times we also get mixed up in our implementation, because what we are thinking as an outcome is actually as an output. And I will give you an example using your SRHR project. So your theory of change maps out what we call the missing middle. The missing middle between what you do as a project and how this leads to desired results. And it draws on a causal analysis. Does X lead to Y? And does it always necessarily mean because you have Y, it is because of X? So these are the questions you interrogate. So it also explains how a group of early and intermediate accomplishments set the stage for producing long-range results. So what you first do is work backwards. This is what we call reverse engineering. You identify what is our desired long-term result. What transformative change do we want to see in our region? Then you work backwards and identify the salient conditions that must be in place for your long-term or transformative change to occur. You're not thinking about what should we do. That comes later. What should first come to your mind is, what change do we want to see? Then work backwards and say, for us to get to this change, then what must be in place? For those things to be in place, then what must we do? And then we map out how these conditions causally relate to one another. We depict it in sort of a schema. So now that we've understood what it is, why do we need it? You must appreciate that development challenges are complex because they are caused by many factors, and there are several layers that are embedded very deeply in the way as a society we function. For example, you may be dealing with an issue of GBV, and maybe your project is trying to reduce the incidences or the prevalence of GBV in certain communities. And one of the things you might be thinking about is, maybe we need to have a legal aid clinic so that we can ensure that more women are accessing justice services. And that's a very noble thing to do. But if you do not, in your project or in your theory of change, address cultural sensitivities towards GBV and towards women going to access legal services, if you do not address the necessary legal reforms, because maybe you might be thinking, we could have a mobile legal aid clinic. Do your regulations allow you to have, mobile legal aid clinics? Even something as minor as childcare constraints. You have a noble idea. You want to speed up the legal aid maybe to women facing GBV clinics in remote areas. And you come up with a brilliant idea and say, oh, we can have a mobile clinic. And maybe your reforms, your legal procedures allow you to do that. And then you set this elaborate infrastructure. You even get the personnel. You get there, but nobody's accessing the services. And then at the end of the day, you want data and there's no data, and you're asking yourself, but wait a minute, we've done everything that we could to make sure that we reduce what we call the distance decay between access of services and the beneficiaries that need it. Why are they not uptaking these services? Question is, did you consider, for instance, something as minor as childcare constraints? If this woman has to go to a court Does she go with her child? Does she have somebody that she can leave her child with? Are courts child-friendly? Is your legal aid clinic child-friendly, that even if she was to go to the court, that there is a provision for somebody to look after her child while she is, attending her court case? You may say, but our role is not childcare. Absolutely. But if you do not address that small thing within your theory of change, then you're not going to get to your larger goal, because then this becomes an impediment. So a TOC helps you to conceptualize. It helps those who are conceptualizing and implementing the program to systematically think through the many underlying and root causes of development challenges and how they influence one another, so that you can determine which aspects of your project, which challenges are you going to address in order to then get to your desired change. Secondly, your theory of change helps you to make course correction if the selected approach is not working, or if anticipated risks or crises materialize. We all know we're in this era of COVID-19. I can bet for a fact that when you are conceptualizing your project, you did not foresee the challenges that would be brought about by COVID-19. Now, if you have a theory of change, you're able to go back and make a course correction to say, what are the challenges that COVID-19 will bring about to our project? And can we then recalibrate our TOC so that we will still get to the end result, but we have taken into recognition the unforeseen or anticipated, an unanticipated risk or crisis. Also, when you're doing your monitoring and evaluation, and I know, and as I have also had in this presentation, many people fear M&E. And the reason we fear M&E is, unfortunately, and I mean this not to insult anybody, I hope you'll take it in a light way. Many of us have what you call the slave mentality, that we will only do what is right if there's somebody in authority watching over us. I don't know about your countries, but in this country, for example, we are so allergic, drivers are so allergic to the red light. I remember one time my first visit to Botswana, I arrived very late at night. And of course, the population is already very, very low. And given that it was very late at night, there were even probably 1 or 2 cars on the road at the time. But the guy who picked me up kept stopping at every traffic light. This was like 1 in the morning. I'm looking at him like, what's wrong with this guy? In Kenya, we just fly, sorry to say, but, and you even fly during the day unless there's a policeman, when the light is on. So the concept, many people have taken the concept of M&E to be that monster that is trying to get you, that is trying to find the wrong that you have done in your work. But no, M&E can help you to refine your assumptions, to help the data that they give you and the information that they give you, helps you to inform your decisions on, are you on track? Do you need to make a course correction? And based on that data, then you go back and recalibrate your theory of change, because you say, if we continue following this road, despite the information we are getting from M&E, we may not get there. And then thirdly, it's utilized as a means for developing and managing partnerships by selecting those that have the leverage of achieving the intermediate results. Probably when I was talking about childcare constraints, maybe what was going on in your mind is, this is not our mandate. How can we spread ourselves so far, so thin? We'll never have enough resources to do everything, to get to where we need to go. But this is what your theory of change helps you to do. It will help you to determine which partnerships do you forge. In the case I gave with the legal aid clinic, are you able to have partnership with a CSO or a CBO or a faith-based organization that can help you, or whose core mandate is just looking at childcare, for instance? then you bring them on board, but you don't bring them on board during implementation. They become part of your project design so that you can foster this consensus. They can be motivated, and also showing them how their work contributes to the longer term impact. So you're carrying everybody on board, and you're already thinking about your partnerships at the time of the project design, which is the stage at which you develop your theory of change. Fourth, it strengthens what we call the principle of subsidiarity. And I'm sure you're familiar with this, and it is where that a larger and greater body should not exercise functions that can be carried out more effectively by a smaller and lesser institution in achieving the desired objective. For example, the goal of your project, as I saw in some of your project documents, is to integrate SRHR and HIV/AIDS services and related rights through parliamentary action. Now, my observation, and this is a by the way, so if we were in a physical room, we would put this on the parking lot to be discussed if we had more time or another opportunity. Your goal for your project, and I don't mean to be critical about it, but we are here to learn. Your goal is what we call an instrumental goal, but your goal should be transformative. Your goal is to integrate SRHR through parliamentary action, and what you're trying to do is to ensure that women enjoy their rights, women access services, and all of this. But this may require partnerships. You cannot do it alone as parliamentarians. Just doing it alone, because of the conversations you have also brought about in terms of sensitivities of some of these issues, you may need traditional and religious leaders. So this is where now the principle of subsidiarity comes in. Your traditional and religious leaders are able to carry a certain aspect of your project much better in terms of the function than the parliamentarians would be able to do, or even the secretariat would be able to do. That is why in your theory of change, now you begin determining what are some of the conditions that need to be in place. Who are the partners that are best placed to carry out those functions? What change, if we engage these partners, what change do we need to unlock so that it can help us then now to move on to the larger change that we need to see. So, and the reason why I say this goal is instrumental in and of itself is it's a good thing, and most projects strive to have policies that address many of these development issues. And you are in a very perfect place where this can be accelerated because you're dealing with the policymakers themselves. Many organizations struggle with how do we even get the policymakers to take up our issues. Here you're dealing right at the heart of the matter. But why it also remains instrumental rather than transformative is if it is not implemented, then it is just as good as on paper. And Caroline showed you a map, a green and red map, that it is not just enough to have a policy. Does that policy translate to the transformative change that you want? Many of you that probably follow, those of you that are Kenyans or probably follow the Kenyan politics. Right now we have an issue where the Chief Justice has given our president an advisory to dissolve parliament. Reason being, we have a provision in our constitution that requires that our parliament has to be constituted with a 2/3 gender rule. So right now it is not constituted in accordance to that constitution. The matter is in court, so I'll not speak too much regarding it. But what I am trying to show you is that just because an issue or a focus area is integrated in statute documents like the law, the policy, the constitution, does not necessarily mean that it is being implemented and that it is creating the change that we want to see. And remember, we want transformative change at the goal and the outcome level. But as I said, discussion for a different day. So how do you develop your theory of change? You first start with asking the question, what is a core problem? Because many times we deal with causes, and causes can be both primary and secondary. We deal with symptoms. Sometimes we even deal with effects, but never the core problem. And the problem then keeps recurring, and we keep asking, but we're doing everything right. Why are we not getting to the issue? I was in South Sudan at one point, and they were looking at this area of GBV, and they were saying, you know, we need to address GBV. But in one community, what they realized is that it's not a problem to that community. In fact, the women did not see it as a problem. So even when you're defining your problem, for whom is it a problem? And why is it a problem? Science is important. But remember, culture in many times can override science. So you need to work to the point where even culturally or socially, everybody is on the same page of what the core problem is. And then also asking, then why does it occur in the first place? So for example, your project problem is lack of access to integrated SRHR and HIV/AIDS services and related rights, including bringing forward social change, improved health, respect of human rights, enjoyed by all in the SADC region. That's the problem you have stated. My assumption is that this was, there was consensus that this was the problem. And your document, of course, goes on to explain why it's a problem and for whom it's a problem and all of that. So it's important to always reflect, is the problem that we identified when we were developing or conceptualizing our project, as you're still doing your monitoring along the way, is the problem still sound, or has society already moved on? Okay. And then step 2, what is a strategy you will use to address your problem? In your case, you have looked at 4 essential roles of MPs: legislative, oversight, budgetary, and representative functions. You want to use empirical data. In the session that was just preceding this, I mean, there were questions of, we don't have evidence-based data. And the question that was going through my mind is, do we have, does this project have, or have we developed what we call indicator reference sheets? Because if you have indicator reference sheets, that should also be developed at the conceptualization stage. Those IRSs will tell you, this is the indicator that is measuring this output or measuring this outcome. This is the change we expect to see. There will be a definition of terms for the indicator, so that anybody collecting that data has a clear understanding of what do those terms mean. Of course, it will also tell you, how do you calculate, for example, if it is a percentage. And a lot of us just like throwing indicators like percentage of women and girls that are accessing integrated services at level 5 hospitals. The question I always ask is, do you know what your denominator is? It's very easy to get your numerator, but do you know what your denominator is? Because if you do not get your denominator right, your numerator will be wrong. And that is why when you then take your data to Parliament, your minister says, but I have different data. So these are the things to think about, you know, as you're conceptualizing your project and developing your theory of change, but also in your IRS or your indicator reference sheet, it tells you what are your data sources, so that when you're providing data, you already know where to go look for that data. When you submit your report, of course, you have your footnotes or endnotes, and you can always make references to where your data is coming from. And in that case, it becomes difficult for anybody to challenge you on the empirical evidence of your data. And then step 3, then consider the aspects of the strategy you will implement while carefully leaving out what will be beyond the scope of your capacity. For example, in your project, you're looking at what are the legal and policy gaps. You're also looking at how do you strengthen the healthcare system. You're also looking at securing commodities, of course, and many other elements. But just looking at these 3, what comparative advantage do you have to do these 3? Is securing commodities a comparative advantage that you have? In which case, do you then need to bring in the private sector that can strengthen the supply chain so that your role is really just looking at the enabling environment to make sure that even when you're approaching the private sector, you have incentivized them enough for them to be able to want to partner with you and secure those commodities. And these are just examples that I am giving. And then step 4, you identify the immediate result that will be achieved through your strategy. And at every step, and this is what Jonathan was alluding to in the morning, is you keep asking, for this to happen, what needs to happen first, or what needs to be in place? So for example, the right of women and girls to access integrated SRHR and HIV/AIDS services legislation. For us to get there, what needs to happen first? What do we need to do? Do we understand what the integrated services are? Are our health facilities capable of providing these services? Do we have enough personnel? Do they have enough training to do all of that? Or even one of your roles was also budgetary. Have you ensured that you have gender responsive budgets that allocate resources for integrated services? Are the budgets specifically allocating resources towards women and girls integration of SRHR? Or is it covering everybody without necessarily making it a gender responsive budget? If it just covers everybody, chances are that your women and girls will not be accessing these services because there is no deliberate action to make sure that you have dedicated resources towards women and girls accessing those services. And then you need to continue to identify the subsequent immediate results until you arrive at the ultimate result. But point of caution here, results are not always necessarily linear or have a direct causal relationship, because as we always say, correlation does not always imply causation. So depicting that, this is what it would look like. You know, so at the bottom, you have your preconditions, so you have your inputs or your interventions, and then you keep going up to your intermediate outcomes, and then finally to your long-term outcome. And this graph can grow as big as you want, but what you want to do is to make it as simple as possible. I'll just show you the last one, and this is my last slide. Let me see if the Word document can project much better, and you can tell me if you can. Can you see the Word document? Somebody just give me an indication, or do I go back to the PowerPoint?
We can see it. Can you just increase the percentage so that it's okay? Sure, thank you.
Is that better?
You can try again. Okay. Maybe I need spectacles.
Is it clear now?
No, we're still seeing the PowerPoint.
Oh, really?
I'm still seeing the PowerPoint, yeah.
Okay, what does it look like? What does the word look like?
Let me just sorry, let me just. Can you see it now?
Yes, we can see it. I thought over 50s, you are blind now. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry about that. Okay.
Now we can see it now.
Now you can see it. Thank you for the confirmation. Okay, so at the bottom you have your problem, and this it somehow mirrors the work that SRHR is trying to do, but it is not the theory of change for SRHR. So it's just a depiction of what it would look like. So at the bottom here you have your problem. So you say, you know, gender-based violence against women and girls and the threat of such violence exercised through individuals, communities, and institutions in both formal and informal ways violates women and girls' human rights, constrains their choices and agency, and negatively impacts on their ability to participate in, contribute to, and benefit from development. So in one problem statement, you have articulated many of the things. And as you know, When we are building capacities, we build capacity at individual level, at community, at institutional level, at enabling environment level. And then looking at how is the problem then impacting the girls? It's constraining their choices and agency. It's negatively impacting on their ability to participate in, contribute to, and benefit from development. So it's not just simply the lack of something, but how does that then affect them? What really is the core problem? Okay, and then now you go on to looking at the primary and secondary causes. And some of them would include maybe an overburdened and under-resourced civil society that is trying to undertake the majority of the prevention and resource efforts. It could be the dominant social norms that we're talking about in terms of values, beliefs, that support male dominance, and some of them even condone violence against women and girls. It could be inadequate services in terms of education, in health, justice, and security to prevent, protect, and respond effectively. It could also be the lack of political will. Remember, some people were saying that you know, some members of parliament would not even want to touch some of these issues with a 10-foot pole, or even constrained resources in government and other intervening institutions, or maybe lack of social or legal and economic autonomy for women, which then further increases their vulnerability. So those become your causes towards your problem. So in terms of interventions, then what do you do? So you can have interventions that empower the women and girls. For example, legislating the right of ownership of land or even productive assets, looking at increasing literacy, especially second chance education, and promoting leadership at all levels. You could also have interventions to change social norms. This would be where we were talking about building the capacity of media. How do they report on violence against women and girls? How do you engage traditional and religious leaders? How do you teach gender equality in school curricula? Just to plug in about media here, there was, you know, a very vibrant discussion on media. Just as an aside, I'm a part-time journalist, if you can call it that. I write a weekly column for one of our newspapers, and I write on issues, political economy. Economy can be very dry, but the way I do it is I make sure that I have a hook line. I have a hook line that will get people interested in the story, and then I make sure that the story is resonating with what is currently happening. And then now I break down the technical economic issues in relation to, you know, what I've just said. Most of the times when we are writing on development issues, we tend to be very dry. We tend to use a lot of jargon. We tend to be, it's like we are writing a thesis. And we forget that we are competing for attention with so many other things that are happening. So we also need to understand, how do you make sure that you're able to present your issue in a manner that can be received. So it's not just a question of let's train the media to report positively, but can we train ourselves also to present our case in a way that will interest people? If you lose anybody's interest within the first 5 seconds of reading your introduction, you've lost them forever. That was an aside. Back to the session. We can also have interventions that build political will and legal and institutional capacities to prevent and respond. For example, policies reforming security and justice sectors, or interventions that provide comprehensive services. Can we create safe spaces for women and girls? Can we strengthen their safety nets? Can we have a creation of gender responsive policies and special courts? Because a lot of times the other reason why women do not go to seek justice is it takes so long. The perpetrator by then has already disappeared, or you have moved on with your life. How many times can this one woman keep going back to court to seek justice? Can we find a way to accelerate some of these processes? And you can see that the arrows that are going back and forth are showing you that in a theory of change, everything is interlinked. So one can lead to the other, or the other leads to the other, or lead through a vertical intervention. So in terms of your outputs, after you have done all these interventions, one of the things that you probably are going to see is ownership of access to and control over productive resources by women and girls increased because of all the things you have done in terms of political, legal, economy, and social. Our institutional capacities to organize collectively facilitate social change, and respond to violence against women and girls incidents is strengthened. Or implementation of policies and budgets on prevention and response to VAUG enhanced, or community level mechanisms on prevention and response to VAUG strengthened. So this becomes your immediate outputs. They become your immediate changes that can be attributed to your project. And then collectively, those outputs, maybe what they could bring about is women and girls now know their rights, they are empowered, they're supported and resourced to claim them as individuals and collectively. Values, beliefs, attitudes, behaviors, and practices of individuals, of communities, of institutions shift to recognize that VAUG is as unacceptable and is a crime. And then in terms of your outcomes, we talk about change in behavior, change in practices, change in the enabling environment. So here we now look at accountability by government and service providers to prevention, protection, and response to VAUG is increased. Access to adequate and integrated VAUG support services by women and girls expanded, and that can be economic, medical, psychosocial, security and shelter. Access to swift justice services by women and girls enhanced, including within customary and religious laws. And then this is definitely going to lead to social change that's related to gender power relations and gender equality, where you're looking at power relations and control over resources, shift to become more balanced, and gender equality then increases. And then as a result, women and girls also exercise their agency and autonomy over their bodies and lives. The other outcome would be changes in social norms related to VAUG strengthened. And here, VAUG becomes unacceptable under any social, political, economic, and cultural circumstance at all levels. And then GBV against women and girls is actively and effectively negatively sanctioned at all levels. And then ultimately, then that's when you get your impact. And your impact then becomes women and girls are free from all forms of gender-based violence and from the threat of such violence. And then the women and girls are safe to pursue human rights and fundamental freedoms. And the development gains, for example, SDGs are made as a key barrier to their success is eliminated. So on the very left-hand side is what this column here is what you call your results chain, and one leads into the other. And they're not necessarily, the intermediate changes in the middle are not necessarily always linear. Sometimes you may have to go back to an output in order for you then to recalibrate and get back on track. So that is what your theory of change could potentially look like. And in looking at this, then you're saying, which partners can we engage with? For example, here you're already looking at media. Media automatically then becomes one of your partners. It doesn't just become a conduit, it becomes one of your partners. Here, increasing literacy, especially second chance. You need to work with cultural and traditional leaders for them to allow girls that either have become pregnant or as a result of early marriage are able to go back to school. You need to work with the Ministry of Education for them to have a policy that encourages, second chance education. You need to work with your teacher service training colleges. Are they able to train or do they have the cognizance and the attitudes to train, girls in second chance education, and so on and so forth. And finally, I just want to say, asante sana. If everybody is still there, and if I did not bore you to death, I'll make you even more hungry. Thank you very much.
Karibu, asante sana. Thank you so much.
Open to your question and answer now. If not, I hand over back to, was it Dennis?
We can actually have a Zoom call for question and answers later in another day. I guess people are still absorbing as well. And as you indicated between lunch, but at least one or two questions that would assist us to gauge the need for having a Zoom just to engage further with Susan on some of your questions that may be specific and to digest what she has shared. If you could also share your PowerPoint presentation, Susan,
Yes.
which was quite good.
I
And
will.
thank you for such a brilliant presentation. Dennis is muted, so I'm not sure. Colleagues, any questions? Pamela, you can also ask questions. Genevieve, Manuel, I only see you because your cameras are on. Okay, Jabu is there. Tato, I've never seen Tato today. I saw her name, but I'm not sure if Ifoma is there. I'm doing a roll call, colleagues.
I'm here working from
Pamela,
home.
okay, Shuma is there. It's fine. We also know homes. Switch on your camera. We all have homes. Don't worry about what it looks like. It's a new normal. Yes, colleagues, could you kindly, each one of you, I need to gauge whether I need to engage Susan further for you to interrogate what she has said. Maybe you want to go back to your project, your scenario, and be able to say, how do we best report or extract what we need to do? So kindly I'm going to do a roll call. I'm going to start as it appears on the camera. Chuma, say something.
Madam SK?
Yes.
Do you mind if I just come in before the roll call with a comment from Susan's presentation? Thank you very much, Susan, for your presentation. Quite good and quite informative. M&E people, they always nail it. So I can always say that. I got inspired so much, especially by the fact that with our theory of change, we can also consider with the context in which we are working in, we had a theory of change done. I don't know if most of us who were in phase one got involved into the time they came up with the current theory of change that we are using. But from my side, I got it that it is quite important that at times we need to do a review as well, to go back and review on our theory of change, especially amidst the COVID challenges that we are encountering. I think on that part, if Susan doesn't mind, I would ask with the authority of the SG that I can also engage with her and she can actually teach me more on that part as well. And we can see how we can creatively revise on ours as well to see whether it's still relevant to what we want to achieve at the end, or we are still on the path as well. Thank you very much. I learned quite a lot. I learned, I can't explain it. Rather, I should say the whole presentation was quite informative for me. It's always good to learn from big sisters who have walked the road. So please expect more of me and engaging with this project as well. Thank you very much. I appreciate it a lot. It has opened a lot in my career as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Pamela, for those kind words, which are quite factual as well. Colleagues, you recall your first training when you came on board, you are made aware that your partners are APHRC. I wonder how many of you have reached out to request for certain support, because the background of what they do, the wealth of technical people they have on board. Kindly go back, contact Grace. Some of you went all the way to Kenya. I don't know how you did not find such a resource. So please, please, please go back, be present. We do these capacity developments for a reason. We want you to excel and improve on your areas. Maggie, all the other colleagues have been there to say, this is what we can do. We're sociologists. Some of the issues you deal with really push you to be looking at communities. And they had an anthropologist in the team, which I thought you guys would utilize beyond now to come and break down some of these issues that we're talking about, especially under SRHR. I won't go further because we have visitors, but kindly be guided. Chuma?
I'm still laughing. I'm still laughing. Okay, yeah, sure, we have visitors. So, still, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much, Susan, for the presentation. It's quite exciting, yeah. And the demonstrated capacity and capabilities that came our way is quite interesting. And you see, like what Pamela was saying, we already have this done for us, the theory of change, everything all the way, and we jumped in for us to implement. And of course, even from the previous project, it was also done, and researchers came on board to implement. But you know, you'd always look, and then you're like, okay, and you are maybe having a problem with some outcome or some output, and you feel no, this one is not relevant, or this one is not, it doesn't work for my country or something like that. And last time we actually had a mid session, a mid project session, and yeah, we were even actually sometimes adjusting some of these things to say, okay, let's make it flexible, as long as we are reaching the desired impact or achieving the desired objective. Some of these indicators, some of these means of verification, maybe or whatever, they don't apply in our situation, something like that. So yeah, I'm sure we might also need even to relook at what we are sitting on right now with the gained capacities. But I'm like what Madam SG was asking. I would propose that we maybe we do another session, but maybe focusing on linking activities or interventions and outcomes and outputs as well. The outputs being maybe the interventions, maybe the leading to the outcomes, and going deeper with progress markers. So that from the Word document, problem fine, we are okay, and causes of the problem and whatever. But as we are going up there to the interventions, linking them to the outcomes and the progress markers. Maybe we can have a separate session, but focusing on exactly what's on our project paper. Right, focusing exactly on what's on our project, but going one by one, because I think that's the crux of the matter. What we need to do, the activities that we need to do on the ground in order to achieve the outcomes. So that's my comment and request here.
Thank you very much, Shuma. That's a good proposal. But I also hope that you've also taken heed of the Word document that Susan was displaying for you to exercise your minds around because remember, every parliament, you may be dealing with a bill on maybe public health for a certain period. Another country is dealing with a bill on key population, another on CSE. One or two Malawi and Botswana, like currently, they're dealing with GBV. So if you looked at what parliamentary calendars, the project proposal would not have anticipated those issues in advance. So Susan, they are right. When the project ended, they were all gone because we have to apply for money. That's the reality. And you also know that when you look at key thematic issues, the donor would say, don't lose out on the issues where you felt you made traction. Go back to those particular issues. But it doesn't mean that when Seychelles decides to focus, because they have a concentrated epidemic, on drug injecting users, that issue cannot be put into the project from an SRHR angle and be reported accordingly. It doesn't mean you should always be saying members of parliament, members of parliament. What about the representation role of those members of parliament? And those were the anchors that Susan was showing. Where is the community? Do members of parliament only represent themselves, or do they deal with other groups? So I'm just saying, open up. Your project activity doesn't always have to say this type of activities. The mock tribunals were not listed, Shuma, for instance. Some media interventions were not listed, like Zambia is trying to know campaigns that were being done as a way of gathering information. So let's just share with Susan, apart from the project proposal, what are your innovations? So that she can be able to say, what were you thinking of doing this? and how is it going to assist the people of Zimbabwe, parliaments, among others. So thank you for that input. Sorry, now who was there? Who was next to you? Manuel Chifunga.
Okay, thank you, SG. So in myself, I think this information was very useful because there are more projects in the fields, but what we have to know is those projects are bringing change. For our case, our project in SADF, what change this project will bring for us as staff in the parliament to support MPs in their oversight missions, in their principally in the side of sexual and reproductive health and right. What changed? So we have to be focused in this. What change this can bring for us? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Dennis was on and off. I think I made a coup. I thought you were not there, Dennis. Jabulile, then Genevieve, then Ifoma. Genevieve, kindly go ahead. I think Jabulile is still muted.
Thank you, SG. And first of all, allow me to commend Suzanne for this wonderful and insightful presentation, for putting it together for us. And definitely would be wonderful if we could have a second session specifically relating to that. And I was thinking sort of in the same line as Pamela when she mentioned the issue of COVID, because I believe that now everything will have to change. We have to think differently, we have to act differently, and definitely our results now will not be the same as before. So definitely the theory of change will change. I was thinking in that line. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Genevieve. Ifoma.
Thank you, Madam SG. Thank you, other presenters. I think M&D for me, it's come very timely. It's something that we should do every now and then because it challenges our implementation. And I think Kamala is always on us, and I appreciate that. So any other intervention that speaks to us sharpening our work, for me, is something that is in the right direction. So I really appreciate the interventions that you bring forth, Madam SG, related to building our capacity. Because then it always tells you to go back to the document. It always reminds you that maybe you're firing off. It always reminds us to be innovative. I think there isn't much I can say, but I really appreciate the interventions related to M&D. Because at the end of the day, as I think Chuma had said, it will be very difficult for us at the end of the project to start speaking in tongues on what we have actually achieved. I think we always need to remind ourselves and ask ourselves, what is it that we're doing and where are we going to be able to point as we progress? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ifoma. Please, guys, send your requests through to APHRC so we can look at what to do beyond this. I note the affirmation, but kindly also do that through email so that we can structure exactly what it is and for what period and things like that. Who do I see? Geraldine?
Hello. Hello, Madam SG.
Hello, Mr. Dennis.
Yes, thank you. The hiccup with the network as usual. Sorry.
Okay, sorry, it's fine. I was doing a roll call, Mr. Dennis. I'm on Geraldina. After Geraldina is Chawapiwa. Gomezani, please say something. And then I don't see any other. I don't see DRC. Shonene Kurasha is there from programs at the SADC PF. Then we'll have Grace at the end to just let us know or emphasize our collaboration in terms of how we can really move this process forward. We have 8 minutes before 1:30, so kindly colleagues, if there's anything to say, say something. If not, say you'd pass for today.
Thank you.
Thank you, SG. I think it's with the presentation that has just been made from APHCR, it was very insightful. One of the things that I realized as she was talking about the theory of change was, for me, I think it's looking at the upcoming activities that we're doing with committees. I was thinking, it kind of became like a light bulb where I was like, aha, because we have the youth committee meeting, the members of parliament who are youth, and me saying, needing to start to think, how do I engage them in such a way that they look at issues of adolescent SRHR in the country, and them starting to look at that through that lens, and also looking at the GBV issues, not through the broader country lens, but rather through the lens of the children who are being abused at 3 years old, at 4 years old, at 12 years old, and saying, as we go on oversight visits, how do I ensure that they wear that lens as we go into communities? So for me, it was really insightful. That's all I can say.
Thank you very much, Tato. We are still going to get Susan to sum it up, don't worry, all of you, but I just want her to hear and contextualize the issues because you are different countries. Gomezani? I don't see Elizabeth, I don't know.
Hello?
Go ahead, we can hear you.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Susan, for the presentation. I was very much impressed with the presentation. It was very much profound and very insightful. For me, on fear of change, you know, sometimes we just implement activities without thinking of what change this activity going to bring to the project, to our country. So it has given me an insight of I should be thinking of, whenever I'm implementing an activity, I should be thinking of what change is it going to bring to our nation, even to the project. So in such a way, I'll be on the track. So this presentation has really helped me. Yeah, in fact, I've never been in touch with the APHR, but with the presentation, I think it's very important that I should be in touch with the APHR, ask more about the theory of change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gomezani. Remember, they are also available to do briefs for you. Chuma has already benefited from a brief on child marriage. And I'm wondering, out of all 11, 12 countries, is it only Zimbabwe that needs briefs? Why are we not submitting if there's a resource to assist us in doing this? It could also be for members of parliament to understand, why are you bothering them? You know, you could map out something for them to be encouraged. So thank you for that confession. That is why I want Grace to say something, because we have an MOU, we have agreed to certain resources, and I'm hoping to find out that they've received more than one request that I have seen for support. I don't know who I'm not picking, but I think that's enough. Look, Elizabeth, I see you. Okay, if Elizabeth is not coming on, Mr. Shonene Kurasha.
Good afternoon, SD, and good afternoon, colleagues. It is nice to catch up. I was listening from across the region in terms of what's happening the project in the countries. You took me to many places in times when we are not able to travel. I also enjoyed the high resources that emanated from the presentations. Susan, you are an apt communicator. I enjoyed how, as I put it in the chat, how you showed off how resourceful you are. And just to reiterate the point raised by the SG in terms of the availability of the APHRC to assist with technical analysis areas around research. We also would have communicated or are going to be communicating regarding training that is available. Part of it very much related to the skills that will enhance your work, which APHRC are going to offer to staff of national parliaments. So please refer to the master plan, master work plan that would have been circulated. Not we will be ready to share with the researchers the master plan, which indicates the training that's available. Our HR department is the one that's coordinating that training. Part of it is coming in this last quarter. So please make use of that. Thank you, SG, and thank you.
Okay, colleagues, I'm being alerted the meeting is going into overtime. So allow me at this point to give Susan just to say something, then we give to Grace to say something, and we'll be closing the meeting accordingly.
Mine is just to thank all of you for your attention and for your kind remarks. I think learning is a continuous process. We all learn every day. I've also learned a lot from what you guys do, and I look forward to engaging with you much more. And I will. Grace has my contacts. If you need to get in touch with me, you can, loop it through Grace, and it will definitely get to me. But nice to meet you all, and I hope to interact with you more in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grace. I'm putting you on the spot. I think by now you know.
Thank you, Madam SG. Thank you for putting me on the spot. Thank you all the presenters. I must say I also learned a lot. And thank you, Susan. Like I said, it was confidence in your abilities. That's why you were the last. You can see the response, which has pleased everyone. Just to reiterate what Madam SG has said, we signed an MOU over a year ago with APHRC and SADC-PF, and that MOU allows parliamentary staff to make use of the resources we have at APHRC, and there are quite a number. There's a rapid response service that Madam SG has been talking about from the beginning, where we are able to provide you with evidence for yourselves as you do your research work for parliamentarians, even for information that parliamentarians may need. So far, Chuma and a lady from Namibia, I don't remember her name, they've made use of that. Elizabeth, yes, they've made use of that service. The last one was Chuma, who needed information on the child marriage model law for the opening of the Zimbabwe Parliament. So it's only been those two so far. And we've really been anticipating. We thought the requests would be coming in every day, but so far we've only received those two. So please send your requests, whatever it may be, whether it's your MPs who need information, whether it's for your work, we are able to send you whatever information you need. And then once we send you whatever information you need, data or evidence, please get back to us. Tell us how it was received, tell us what we need to change, tell us what we can add, so that we also know how we are doing, whether what we gave you was adequate enough or whether there are things we need to change. And that's also part of M&E. Then in about a week or two, Maggie will be sending you a link
to a part of our website where you can fill in your needs for that rapid response service. So there'll be a form where you can fill in your requests. It's a detailed form, which will also enable us to serve you better. So Maggie will be sending that in about 2 weeks' time. Then Kurasha mentioned the master work plan. In that master work plan, we have a couple of sessions that we will be facilitating, and they are across the board. So our upcoming one, which will be the week of 15th October, includes media, online and digital media. So I'd ask all of you, I know Kurasha has a schedule because it will be in 2 parts to cover all the member states and the staff of parliament. So I'd urge you to fill out a form that Maggie has shared with Kurasha. It's a needs assessment form. It will help us to determine what level of training that you require for the media and the social media. So please fill out that form so that we know how to adequately cover your needs during that capacity strengthening. And there are many other sessions. Like if you remember early on this year in February, we also covered a session on evidence, how to do your research, how to present your evidence. And that was presented by 2 of our colleagues, Anthony and Amy. Amy is the anthropologist that Madam SG mentioned. So we have a wide range of resources. We can't even begin to cover who they are and what they do. And we are there for you. You just need to let us know what you need. So that is basically what is covered in our MOU. And we reiterate again, please reach out to us. Let us know what you need in terms of capacity strengthening, whatever evidence you need for your parliamentary works, even with the parliamentarians, and we'll be ready to do it for you. Over. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace. Colleagues, have a great weekend. Wash your hands, wear your masks, keep the distance that is required. Go to the hospital when you have symptoms and you suspect it could be COVID, so that you can protect your loved ones. Let's continue the spirit of learning and creating a community of knowledge thinkers that can contribute to the SADC region. I'd like to thank you all for your time. Our interpreters, merci beaucoup, muito obrigada. Thank you for extending yourself. We're over the time with 4 minutes. I hope you'll be able to forgive us and not bill us for this session. Thank you so much. I really appreciate and see you again for the next session. Mr. Shawn Kurasha will send the calendar again, and I think this time send the form. We are finding that other parliaments are flooding us with requests compared to others. And I don't believe that that means that those parliaments are fine and they know everything. It also may mean that they have not shared because of COVID. People are working in different places. So please share the knowledge, share the information. See you again next time. Host, you may terminate. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan.
Bye,
We'll
everyone.
keep in touch with
you
you.
all.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Gondre. Thank you for a great directorship of the program and organizing it. Thank you.
Thank you, SG.